If I were to ask you, what is the worst map that there is in Overwatch, we will have a discussion that will span for hours, days, if not weeks. And to some of you, it might be maps like Paraíso for being just a bit too defender-sided, or a map like Havana for being a sniper paradise for all the Widowmaker players out there. And obviously, no matter what map I name you, it is always going to be a subjective opinion. With an exception for one map in particular, a map that almost every single Overwatch veteran player will tell you that it was indeed the worst map that they have ever played in Overwatch.
Welcome to Paris 47.
Oh shoot! Oh, sorry, this is the wrong game. Let me fix that real quick. But before we dive deep into why Paris was the worst map in the game, let's go back to where it all started. Back to February 19th of 2019, the official map release day. Oh my god, look at all this cool stuff. Look, you can swing on this, swing. Wait, what is that? A singing lady? That's awesome. I wonder what is happening outside of the spawn. Wow, this looks like the best map ever added to Overwatch. I can't wait to play. Paris was the second assault map added to Overwatch and 5th overall. An assault map, or commonly referred to as 2CP, is an attack/defend game mode where you have 2 capture points. The initial reaction to this new map was quite mixed. Some people praised the visuals and aesthetics of the map, while others were a bit disappointed that it was a 2CP map. Which is quite fair considering what happened to Horizon Lunar Colony, but we'll not be going there for now. But one of the most important additions to Overwatch were none other than pigeons. Yeah, pigeons. You see, for some weird reason, you can find a lot of comments mentioning pigeons on this map, and I guess that reaction was kind of warranted. You know, when you immerse yourself in the world of Overwatch, you forget what the outside world is, so you need a little reminder to yourself how that world looks like by adding animals to your favorite game.
You know we exist, right?
Oh, yeah, my bad. Yeah, anyway. You can visibly see how much effort has gone into creating this map, and it's hard not to appreciate all the tiny details that the map makers decided to put into this map. One of my favorite places on this map is this little pastry shop called Pâtisserie Galante. Excuse my poor French, it'll happen again. What I like about this little shop is not just how nice it looks from the outside and inside, but more about how the map makers took their time to model different kinds of pastries. I mean, obviously, if you're going to make a pastry shop, it will make sense to have pastries included in them. But what I found interesting is how many different types of pastries they made for this place. You got different sorts of them, like mille-feuillet, macarons, croissants, brigittes, eclairs, custards, and fruit tarts, and I think these are called cannelés. And you know what can happen when you eat one of these delicious pastries? Some food can get stuck inside your teeth, and luckily for you, this video sponsor Natura Pine got you covered. But not only they are great for getting food out of my teeth, they also help me focus while making these videos. Especially during the long recording sessions where I have to sit for 10 hours nuking Juno. They also come with many different flavors that are both super flavorful and have 0 sugars or calories in them. My personal favorite is their new summer blueberry and ice peach flavor. And they are also available in both NA and EU. Yes, UK, you as well. Click on the link in the description or go to naturapine.com and use my code Popcorp to get 10% off. You're gonna love putting them in your mouth. Just make sure you don't eat them. Thank you Natura Pine for sponsoring today's video. Now back to the video. By venturing just outside of this cafe, we'll see the first capture point of this map. But that's not what truly interests us. What I am interested in is located in this building to the left. This building contains the second best thing that was added to Overwatch's catalog of the coolest map props. The piano. And yes, there's one outside of the defender spawn. This piano has spawned an unhealthy amount of YouTube videos, Reddit posts, and other internet media you can think of. Seriously, just look up Overwatch piano and you'll find hundreds of videos of players and even piano players trying their hand at playing this thing. Ironically speaking, the addition of this piano has produced more content than anything else that you can see or do on this map. And due to the popularity of this piano, more pianos were added to other maps as well, like here on Circuit Royale or Atlas. And even to this day, people still use this particular piano on this specific map to make video content. So I can say with full confidence that without this piano, the map would have been fully forgotten, if not entirely removed from the game. But apart from all the cool aesthetics, there's actually some lore to this map. One of the major Omnic invasions happened here in Paris, as you can see here in the cinematic. If you go to the police station that is close to the first point, you'll notice two familiar faces that have visited this city for one of their little heists. There is also this whole Paris travel blog that was released shortly after the map release. It provides some extra context as to what is happening on this map, like this whole mansion being used for a grand gala to celebrate the recent passage of controversial Omnic rights legislation. But what we are truly interested in is what is written all the way down here. The part that says, Paris is a city of hidden gems. Search out the speakeasies and hidden places as you roam the city. The right word might get you in a place you never knew existed. Oh no. Oh boy, I'm going to activate some core memories in this video. These two sentences at the time have started something big within the Overwatch community, something that a lot of people thought was real, but in reality was a huge hoax. If you were an active member of the Overwatch community back in 2019, you may remember this as the Paris ARG. An ARG is an alternative reality game where, broadly speaking, players have to solve puzzles or clues to progress in a story or discover something that is hidden within the game itself. And at the time, the Overwatch community thought that these two vague and mysterious sentences at the end of the blog post had a deeper meaning to it. Now, if you think about it, if somebody tells you to search for some hidden places around the newly released map, then there is a high chance that you might think that there is something that needs to be found. And that's what a lot of people did. The players started to look all over the map for secret paths that couldn't be accessed, but nobody knew where exactly to look for this secret place. However, the biggest clue was this part of the sentence, search out the speakeasies. Okay, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but a speakeasy is an illegal hidden bar. So, it made sense to look for some kind of discreet looking place on the map. And eventually, the players agreed that this specific part of a map was the secret door that they needed to unlock. It also looked way too suspicious for having some interesting looking graffiti, a text on the wall that says "We're watching you." And if you were to hug this door, you'll hear some music coming behind it. The trial blog also mentioned something about the right word might get you to a place you never knew existed. So it kind of made sense to just spam various voice lines in front of this door to see if anything happens.
And they say, chivalry is dead.
But that did not yield any results. And what you also need to know that this map came out just a few months before replay system was added to the game. So it wasn't possible to look behind this door at the time, until someone managed to find a good use to Doomfist's ult and glitch behind this door, revealing that there was absolutely nothing of interest. Yeah, that's how dedicated players were back then. So in the end, it didn't even matter. It was concluded that there wasn't any ARG going on. No secret doors or places that will lead you to some secret hideout revealing a new pigeon hero that can fly and hack you and make your life miserable. Nope. It was simply just a well-written blog post with an unintentionally deceiving wording. So, at this point you are probably confused as to why am I calling Paris the worst map to have ever been released, after all the seemingly positive things that I've said about it, like pigeons, pianos and doors. It can't be all that bad, right? Right? And oh boy, I was really hoping I don't have to talk about this, but I guess the time has finally come. What you're seeing right now in front of yourself is one of the most annoying things you can experience, something that the majority of Overwatch players, minus drunkard players, hate the most: the choke point. One of the greatest flaws of all the assault maps has always been the initial choke point to the first point of a map. This entire area that consists of a choke point, narrow pathways, enclosed interiors, and what's most importantly, the high ground platform, creates the worst possible headache for the attacking team. Which raises an important question: how can they break through it? Now, one thing you need to understand is that at the time, the game was a bit different to what it is today. And the biggest difference was the game's format, 6v6. Which meant that having 6 players pass through this choke while being shot at by 6 defending players made things a bit too awkward. And obviously, the meta shifted throughout the year of Paris' existence, from free tanks and free supports, also known as the GOATs, to a double shield and bunker composition. Of course, how and which heroes everybody played was different in every rank and in pro play, so I won't be going through every single possible team composition during this era of the game, otherwise this video will be 5 hours long. Instead, I'll be defaulting to the meta that was the most familiar to me in my rank group, the bunker composition. The choke points you can see on the assault maps are not unique to just this game mode. In fact, the choke points exist on most Overwatch maps, but it all comes down to how well designed these choke points are. Take for example King's Row's first choke point. In this particular case, it is not as oppressive as it may look like, unless we're talking about early Overwatch days. Those who know. The statue here grants you free cover from any defenders trying to shoot at you. You also have an access to this flank route in a scenario where you want to go behind the enemy lines or shoot them from different angles. A small roof for mobile heroes to stand on and pressure enemies, or you can also snap them from your spawn room. So as you can see, in this particular case, you as an attacking team have multiple options with how you can deal with the defenders. And if we look at Paris's choke points, none of those things exist. So you can all guess what is going to happen as soon as I try passing through this choke point. Ouch. Yeah, so at the time, if you managed to pass through this choke point without taking a single point of damage, then you would have achieved something completely unrealistic. Hell, I would even go as far and say that they should have added a Paris-specific achievement back then and called it 0 damage choke point. And I know you tank players probably thinking right now, oh, I'm just going to defense matrix or shield my way through it. It shouldn't be that hard. Whoa, don't get ahead of yourself, buddy, because you've clearly never experienced the nightmare that is a cafe Junkrat. Yes, this used to be an actual strat developed and perfected by Junkrat players. All you had to do was sit in this corner and just wait until your prey rushed through this cafe, or past the choke point. But if your team survived going through this cafe unscathed, a new problem would quickly become evident. Where do we go from here? Your options will be to either go forwards straight to the high ground that would somewhat equalize your fighting chances against the enemy team, to the right, which would obviously lead to the enemy team standing on the high ground and your untimely demise. Go back if you've changed your mind, but at that point it will be a bit too late to change your mind as you'd have someone on the enemy team pinstering you. And there's a wall staring at you to your left. So in reality, there was only one true option, and that was to go forward, which, as you may have guessed, will make your pathing and movement quite predictable for the enemy team, which inevitably would end up in your team taking too much damage and losing a teamfight before going anywhere near the capture point. And trust me, things weren't that different if you were to take the right side instead. This is one of the main reasons why Paraiso, to say the least, is one of the least popular maps in the game with the amount of choke points and defender high grounds it has to offer, but that's a video for another day. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm in no way a map maker. I don't really know what would have been a good solution to fix this choke point problem, but let's pretend that I am one. What we could do, in theory, is just slap a long plank to this roof that just skips this entire choke point. Okay, more realistically, place a TNT charge to this choke point and widen it up a bit more, with the right path becoming a bit more accessible and safer to push into. And inside this police station, just move the entrance to the other side. I still think the plank option is a bit better, let me know your thoughts. But unfortunately for all of us who've played back then, this map has never received any major changes to it. Therefore, forcing players to come up with some creative solutions as to how to avoid this entire area, besides playing mobile heroes of course. And at the time, there were 3 most popular solutions to the choke point problem. The most common one was to send the only hero who could pass the choke point safely, Sombra. You see, at the time, Sombra's teleport ability was a bit different. Instead of immediately teleporting and going invisible, you would instead just place your translocator on the ground and it will stay there indefinitely unless destroyed. So by going behind the enemy lines, you could start capturing the point, thus forcing 1 or 2 enemies heroes off the defense line, and then teleporting back to the safe location. And you rinse and repeat this process until your team pushes into the point. And sometimes Ball was used for this strat instead of Sombra. One way of mitigating the incoming damage from the defending team was to simply main wall the high ground and go straight to the right side, which didn't always work, especially if the enemy team had high damage output heroes like Bastion. And one of my personal favorites of dealing with this choke point was none other than Symmetra, who was at the time one of the most hated heroes in the game and considered to be the biggest throw pick, but not on Paris, and for a very good reason. Some Symmetra players have discovered that if you were to roll out from the right side and enter this elbow path, the Symmetra's teleporter was in range to reach these stairs on the left side, which will then give the attackers access to the high ground and direct path to the point. Although later on it became kind of a common strat, so the defending team sometimes had someone guarding the stairs until the attacking team heroes became visible on the scoreboard. That is a lot of talk about just a single choke point of some map of some game mode that people don't even play anymore, except free arcade players. So, while this particular area of a map accounted for just a mere 50% of the overall player dissatisfaction, there were still some other issues that this map had to offer. You see, one of the biggest complaints about the assault maps as a whole is not just the choke points or how the defending team always had a Junkrat player, but rather how long it took for you to go from your spawn to the objective. When it comes to the majority of the Overwatch maps, it takes you on average just about 18 seconds to reach the objective, with the exception of payload and push maps, due to the fact that the position of an objective constantly changes. So, when it comes to the assault maps and looking at how long it takes to reach the objective, as you can see, it does take quite a long time, with the Anubis map being the only map where it takes you just as much time to reach the point as on the most control maps. Paris, on the other hand, or leg, I suppose, wants you to play a walking simulator, with defending team having to walk for half a minute to reach the first point, which is almost the same amount it will take you to walk to Eichenwald's first point and then back to the spawn. It wasn't quite fun dying on this map, if I have to be honest with you. So basically speaking, this silly looking frog hero... Oh, I'm sorry, the wrong picture. This silly looking frog hero was quite essential on the assault maps. Otherwise, you would not be having a great time just walking from spawn to the point. If you're thinking for a second that, hey, choke points are quite bad and annoying when it comes to map designs, but you know what? The opposite can be just as bad. And if we look at the second point of the Paris map, we'll see that... Want to hide from snipers looking at you from the spawn? Nope. Want to hide from a diva bomb while not having a shield? Nope. Want to spin around the point to stall it until Overwatch 2 release? Hell yeah! Whoa, what are you on about, buddy? What are you on about? Don't you see this statue right in the center of this point? Well, let me tell you something. While you think that this statue can provide you with some sort of a cover, in reality, it instead gives you a false sense of security. So, while you can actually hide yourself behind it and block certain sidelines, you would often be exposed to other angles enemies could shoot you from, and being at the dead center of a point made you a prime target for the enemy team, especially if you're on a less mobile hero, compared to some other maps and their last points, and you'll notice that the rest of them include some sort of a cover in close proximity to the capture zone. Paris, meanwhile, you have to walk for a while until you can find cover behind a wall. And you know, there's a legendary saying that goes something like, if there's a problem in your life, just add a box to it. But overall, it was actually an attacker favorite point. You see, unlike the first point where you had just one pathway to take, which then branched into 3 more paths, the second point has 3 pathways from the get-go that you can take, making the attacker team a bit more unpredictable this time around. And one thing I forgot to mention is how long it takes for the attacking team to capture the point. Assuming that you have at least 3 players standing on the point, you can fully cap point A in 15 seconds. However, what's interesting is that when it comes to point B, it is instead 10 seconds. The reason why it's faster to capture the second point is due to the fact that the defending team has the advantage of having their spawn right next to the last point, while the attacking team has to walk for much longer to touch the point. So, what this means is that if you're attacking point B, if you put 3 players on the point, the defending team has to react within 3 seconds or risk giving a tick point to the attacking team. But obviously what I am describing is what will happen in an ideal world. The reality is that most players are not going to be as coordinated as the professional team. So it always came down to a coin flip whether it was easier to attack second point or not. And it also came down to whether or not you had all 6 players. I can recall more than a dozen moments where my team was about to start pushing into the second point, until the enemy Widow got a pick on one of our players, forcing us to wait about 20 seconds to regroup and try again. Until it happened again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again. On April 14th of 2020, both Paris and Horizon Lunar Colony were removed from competitive play, and subsequently from pro play as well. On March 16th of 2022, the same maps were removed from active rotation of other playable game modes. And finally, on October 4th of 2022, the Assault game mode was fully removed from active rotation. If you were to ask me, I did not really mind this game mode. It wasn't perfect and it certainly would not be my first choice if I had to pick a map to play on. As for both Paris and Horizon Lunar Colony, these maps were clearly the worst of the worst. And if you are wondering why I picked Paris over Horizon, it is mostly due to the sheer amount of times I've had players leave and cancel competitive matches after seeing this map pop up on the screen. And because Horizon received a small rework that made it a bit more tolerable versus how it was originally, while Paris received no reworks at all. Thank you all for watching, and a huge thank you to all my channel members for supporting my videos. And a huge thank you to Natura Pine for sponsoring today's video. And as always, I shall see you in the next one.